Have you ever looked at your paycheck, noticed it's bigger than it was a few years ago, and still wondered where it all went? Maybe you remember the excitement of getting your first raise. You told yourself, once I make a little more, things will finally feel easier. Then it happened. The raise came. For a few weeks, life felt different. You worried less, you celebrated. Maybe you upgraded your phone, started ordering food more often, or moved into a nicer apartment. But somehow, a few months later, the feeling disappeared. The stress quietly returned, and instead of asking why life still felt expensive, you started asking yourself something much more uncomfortable. Why doesn't this feel like progress? If that question has ever crossed your mind, you're far from alone. Because one of the biggest surprises about making more money isn't how much it changes your life, it's how quickly your mind adjusts to it. Today, I want to explore why earning more doesn't always make us feel wealthier, why so many people feel stuck even as their income grows, and what actually creates the feeling of financial progress. Because sometimes the biggest problem isn't how much money comes into your account, it's the expectations that quietly grow alongside it. Most of us grow up believing money works like a staircase. The first step is difficult. The second step feels better. The third step feels comfortable. And eventually, if you just keep climbing, happiness is supposed to be waiting near the top. It sounds logical. More money should mean fewer problems. And to be fair, that's often true at the beginning. When someone struggles to pay rent, cover groceries, or keep the lights on, additional income can remove enormous stress. Money matters. It creates options. It buys time. It reduces uncertainty. Pretending otherwise ignores reality. But something interesting begins to happen after those basic needs become more secure. The emotional impact of each extra dollar starts getting smaller, not because the money became less valuable, but because our brains became used to having it. Psychologists sometimes call this hedonic adaptation. It's a simple idea. Human beings are incredibly good at getting used to change. The new phone becomes your normal phone. The nicer apartment becomes your normal apartment. The bigger salary becomes your normal salary. What once felt extraordinary quietly becomes ordinary. Think back to something you desperately wanted 5 years ago. Maybe it was a certain income, a better job, a car, a laptop, a vacation. At the time, it felt like reaching that goal would change everything. Now, ask yourself, how often do you even think about it? Probably not much, because your brain has already filed it under normal life. That's a gift and a challenge. It's a gift because humans can recover from difficult situations surprisingly well. But it's also why success often feels shorter than we expect. We don't stay excited forever. We adapt. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Income usually increases alone. Lifestyle follows closely behind. Imagine someone earning $2,000 a month. They finally receive a promotion and begin earning $3,000. Objectively, that's meaningful progress, but almost immediately, small upgrades begin appearing. The apartment becomes slightly nicer, streaming subscriptions multiply, coffee becomes a daily habit instead of an occasional treat. Weekend dinners become more common. The wardrobe improves. Nothing feels excessive. Each decision seems reasonable by itself. But together, they quietly absorb the extra income. This isn't because people are irresponsible. It's because humans naturally expand into the space they create. Our expectations stretch faster than we notice. Suddenly, what once felt like luxury starts feeling necessary. The nicer apartment no longer feels impressive. It simply feels like where you live. The expensive coffee no longer feels special. It's just part of the morning. Without realizing it, yesterday's dream becomes today's baseline. And once the baseline moves, satisfaction often resets. Not because you're greedy, because you're human. Social comparison makes this even harder. Imagine two people earning exactly the same salary. One feels successful, the other feels behind. What changed? Often nothing except who they're comparing themselves to.
Maybe one person spends time around friends who earn less. The other spends hours scrolling through social media, where everyone seems to own bigger homes, travel more often, and somehow have perfect lives. Our brains rarely measure wealth in isolation. They measure it relative to what we see. That's why someone making six figures can still feel financially insecure. Not because they lack money, because they've surrounded themselves with people who make even more. Comparison quietly changes the definition of enough. And the problem with enough is that it keeps moving. You finally reach it, then someone else's lifestyle convinces you it's still not enough. It's like chasing the horizon. Every step forward simply moves the finish line a little farther away. There's another layer people rarely talk about. As income grows, responsibilities often grow too. A higher-paying job may come with longer hours, more meetings, greater pressure, less sleep, harder decisions. Sometimes people aren't just earning more, they're carrying more. If you've ever finished a long workday feeling exhausted, looked at your bank account, and still wondered why life doesn't feel lighter, this might be why. Money can solve financial problems, but it doesn't automatically solve emotional ones. Stress doesn't disappear simply because your salary increases. Sometimes it changes shape. Instead of worrying about paying bills, you start worrying about keeping the career that pays them. Instead of fearing unemployment, you fear disappointing everyone who expects your success to continue. The pressure evolves. It doesn't always vanish. Family expectations can quietly amplify this. The moment people know you're earning more, new assumptions often appear. You're expected to help more,
Spend more, celebrate more, contribute more. Again, none of this is necessarily wrong. Helping family can be deeply meaningful. Generosity is valuable. But when every increase in income immediately creates new obligations, it becomes difficult to experience progress for yourself. Your financial growth starts belonging to everyone else before you even notice it. That's an emotional burden few people openly discuss. Here's something I find fascinating. When people imagine becoming wealthy, they usually picture buying more comfort, more experiences, more possessions. But many financially secure people eventually discover something different. The greatest luxury isn't buying everything, it's needing less. Think about that for a moment. Real freedom often isn't found in having unlimited spending. It's found in reaching a point where your happiness no longer depends on constantly increasing it. That realization changes everything, because now you're no longer chasing every raise as if it holds the key to peace. Instead, you begin asking a different question. What kind of life actually feels enough? That's a completely different conversation. This is the turning point many people experience. They stop measuring progress only by income. Instead, they start measuring it by stability. Can I handle an unexpected expense without panic? Can I sleep without worrying about every bill? Can I choose work based on more than desperation? Can I spend time with people I love without constantly thinking about money? Those questions don't appear on a paycheck, yet they often matter far more. Because financial progress isn't just about earning, it's about reducing anxiety, creating options, building resilience, buying back pieces of your time. That's a very different definition of wealth, and strangely enough, it's one that feels more satisfying. This doesn't mean ambition is bad. There's nothing wrong with wanting a promotion, starting a business, building investments, learning new skills. Growth is healthy. The important part is understanding why you're pursuing it. If every financial goal exists only to impress someone else, you'll probably keep moving the finish line forever. If your goals reflect the life you genuinely want, progress starts feeling real. Not because your income becomes perfect, because your expectations become intentional. Something else worth remembering is that money works quietly. Social media celebrates dramatic transformations, the overnight millionaire, the luxury vacation, the expensive car. Real financial progress usually looks much less exciting. It's paying off debt little by little, building an emergency fund over several years, investing consistently even when the amounts seem small, saying no to purchases that don't actually improve your life, choosing peace over appearances. None of those moments attract much attention, but together they create something incredibly valuable: confidence. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you're becoming a little more prepared each year. If you want money to feel like progress again, it may help to pause every now and then. Look backwards instead of forwards. Remember what used to stress you that no longer does. Remember what once felt impossible that now feels routine. Celebrate the bills you can pay without fear, the skills you've developed, the habits you've built, the discipline no one else sees. Because progress often hides inside familiarity. The very fact that something feels normal today may be evidence that you already climbed farther than you realize. At the end of the day, more money can absolutely improve life. It can create opportunities, reduce hardship, increase freedom. Those things matter. But if we expect money alone to create lasting satisfaction, we're placing a burden on it that it was never designed to carry. Peace doesn't come from endlessly increasing income. It comes from aligning your money with the life you actually want to live. Sometimes that means earning more. Sometimes it means spending less. Sometimes it simply means appreciating how far you've already come. Because wealth isn't only measured by what's in your bank account. It's also measured by how often you feel that your life belongs to you. And maybe that's the kind of progress worth paying attention to. If you're still building your financial future, don't let the absence of constant excitement convince you that you're standing still. Growth is often quieter than we imagine. It rarely arrives with fireworks. More often, it arrives through ordinary days, steady choices, and habits repeated long enough to become part of who you are. You don't have to be perfect with money. You don't have to earn the highest salary in the room. You don't have to win some invisible race against everyone else. You simply have to keep moving toward a life that feels more secure, more intentional, and a little less stressful than yesterday. And sometimes, that kind of progress is worth far more than another raise ever could be.